Hello, sports fans. Welcome back to your favorite St. Louis sports podcast, The Lounatics. I'm your host, Tyler Edwards, along with my friend, producer, and co-host, John. More importantly, I heard you open a beverage. I have cracked into my bourbon already. Went with Weller tonight. What did you go with, John?
I am drinking the last of my personal supply of the Citywide Stout here. I think I've made it pretty clear that Four Hands has become my favorite St. Louis-based brewery, which is saying something because I also really love Urban Chestnut. For a brewery that does so many stouts and does so many very well, I will say this one is probably my least favorite of the Four Hand stouts. But they do so many so well, I'm kind of excited to go buy some other offerings.
No, I think that's a fair assumption. So for those of you who aren't aware, we have moved into February, which is an exciting time as we get through the All-Star break for the NHL, as well as we are moving into a very important day, February 14th, Valentine's Day, upcoming. So for those of you who have a Valentine, that's great. But what's more important is that pitchers and catchers are reporting for spring training for the Cardinals on the 14th. So that's exciting. We're getting back into baseball season, which for those of you who know John and I know that we're been Cardinals fans born and raised here in mid-Missouri.
That's right. That's right. If you saw the face I was making, it was not about Valentine's Day or spring training starting soon. Both of which things that I am aware of happening next week, but rather that I was just talking about my beer, and while you were talking, my hand like brushed the cup and it like jiggled, and like I thought I was going to spill the whole thing, and I was going to be very sad for so many reasons, but that did not happen. So
this time,
crisis averted. Yes, this time.
Yeah,
no party fouls to begin the podcast.
This time. Yeah, it's no citywide, IPA,
Yeah, and the Citywide Pilsner also very good, which you could buy at the zoo.
Well, the issue with the city, the issue with the Citywide IPA is those of you who have witnessed it live on, and by live I mean live recording, they overcarbonate those things, and I'm going to tell you right now, when I open one, I have to make sure I am ready to chug the foam that is about to blow out of the top.
Yeah.
With the Cardinals and pitchers and catchers reporting, those of you who watched or tried to watch the Cardinals baseball team last year, it was not always easy to do. We did have a lot of pitching issues. But we did have a lot of pitching turnover, and so a lot of new pitchers, both starting and relievers, coming in for spring training. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to with pitchers catchers reporting?
So the funny thing about this, what am I excited about, is I'm weirdly excited for this season because it's baseball season, and I get weirdly excited about it because I'm a baseball nerd. And then I remember last season, and then I remember our entire pitching staff is like 35 and older. And then I start getting sad. That being said, a lot of things went wrong last year that had to go wrong to result in us having such a bad season. So, like, it has to be better than last year, and that's weirdly comforting.
I feel like it has to bounce back. I feel like just getting decent quality innings out of our starters consistently, and again, that's what these older starters that we signed are known for, right? Is consistent, decent quality innings. Nobody's going to mistake Lance Lynn or Gibson for aces, but they are solid inning eaters. They're going to give you a chance to win majority of the time, right? Not saying you will win, but they'll give you a chance to win. And we were missing that of our starting pitching last year. So in that regard, I think that's a huge perk. As far as the bullpen goes, I mean, we did here recently over the last few weeks sign a couple of potential good high leverage relievers, assuming they bounce back from injury and from, and again, age also being a potential factor for both of them as well. The newest being Middleton. What were your thoughts on that signing?
I was pretty excited about it. I think across his career, he's been less exciting. But he did really kind of rejuvenate himself with the Yankees last year. Um, I don't think he had. No, he had a pretty solid little season. On the year, he ended up with 50 innings pitched, 3.38 ERA, 2 saves, 2 wins, 2 losses, solid 1.0 WAR. So he won a game last year by himself, quote unquote, in theory. But if you break his numbers down, his numbers were less good with the White Sox, and let's face it, the White Sox last year were kind of a dumpster fire, and everyone had a bad season there. But he played a lot better when he went to the Yankees. So he had 12 games with the Yankees, pitched to a 1.88 ERA out of 14 innings. Ended up with his ERA plus was actually 235 when he was with the Yankees, which means that his ERA was 135% better than the average.
What you're saying is the peripherals look good.
The peripherals look very good, and I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but he's another heavy strikeout hitter. His strikeouts per 9 comes out to about 11 pretty consistently last year, and then it was around 8 to 10 for his whole career before that. So, like, he's the kind of pitcher we were looking for. It's a good signing for us.
I think it's a good signing. He does have closing experience as well, which I think is going to be important. Closing is something that John struggled with until he met his wife, but that's okay.
You only have to close the deal once if it's the right deal. Shout out to my wife, who is not ever going to hear that amazing clip of mine unless you make it a reel. You have to make it a reel. You have to do this for me because she will see it if you do that.
You know what I'm going to make a reel is I'm going to make you repeatedly saying, I need you to make this a reel so my wife sees this. And then she's just going to guess what you said.
Make both. This is what we have to do. You have to make both.
I'll post
okay?
I'll have to post the real one first.
Yeah, right. And then like 6 hours later, post the other one.
Oh, no, it'll be longer. It'll be like a day or two later. I'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Well, it has to be close enough that people draw the connection.
You got to build suspense, man. You know, it's the same thing, right? Like if you show up and you close the deal on the first night, there's no suspense, right? You're not, that's what you've been going for your whole career.
Yeah. I should have bought the ring earlier. It took me a while to do that, but should have.
Hey, you know what? Your wife is a saint, and she puts up with you every day, and for that, we thank you.
And then I convinced her to like make 2 miniature versions of me, so extra saint points.
I convinced my wife to let me spend a ton of money for somebody else to get her pregnant, so we could have 2 miniature versions of me. So let me one up you.
Tyler, you may be taller than me. You may have more hair on your face and on top of your head than me. Maybe a better athlete than me. But I do reproduce better than you, so at least I've got that going for me, which is nice.
Hey, you know what? We take the victories where we can find them.
That's right. That's right. God, we have gone so far off topic.
I think that makes it's quality content. Our viewers are getting to know us as people.
The listeners know who we are. They know who we are. They know what this is. They're under no illusions.
If they made it through the off the rails piece with Kaler last week, this is nothing.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Continue to talk about Cardinals pitchers.
Sure.
I still would not be disappointed to see them sign another starting pitcher. One Jordan Montgomery is still on the market, as well as Blake Snell. There's a lot of chatter that they may have to take less money to get signed. I think what's more than likely is once a couple of these teams, namely the Rangers, figure out what kind of money they're actually dealing with this year from their TV deal, that they're going to give out some fairly large contracts. They're both Scott Boras clients. I don't know that we're going to get either on a deal that we are going to be able to, or that I say that we are going to be able to afford. We could afford it, but that Mo and company are going to be willing to shell out. But I still think, if imagine a rotation, right? I think Sonny Gray is still probably your opening day starter, but if your number 2 starter is Montgomery, and then come playoff time, if Montgomery's having the better season, which likely could be the case, he starts your first playoff game. But if your 1-2 punch is Montgomery and Sonny Gray, I mean, that's a solid 1-2 punch rolling into any playoff series.
Yeah, I will say that because of nostalgia and all of that, I do think that Monty would be the opening day starter, because that's how the Cardinals do things. There is another starting pitcher with a proven track history of success that's on the market and available. A lot of chatter going on over at Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, excuse me. That's a legal disclaimer that I'm required to use.
Yeah, because Elon Musk listens to all of our podcasts.
Oh, he absolutely does. Yeah, because he's nothing better to do with this. Yeah, absolutely. And that would be Trevor Bauer. And a lot of the other, at least social media pages that I'm seeing that are very Cardinals focused, especially the ones that do just baseball, seem to be fans of the Cardinals signing him. I have my opinion. I am curious what yours is. I think you know what mine is, considering the way I wrote this in our outline.
I think so. You know that domestic violence, and I'm very much against domestic violence of any kind.
You know what? That makes you a very stand-up person.
Yeah, you know my history. I'm not going to get into it. You know people I know. And I think it's important to think through that stuff from a strictly baseball business standpoint. If you can sign somebody like a Trevor Bauer to a league minimum contract with some incentives where you could earn up to $2 or $3 million a year, again, nothing crazy for a 2 or 3 year contract. From strictly baseball sense, yeah, any team would be. It's going to make your team better. From a clubhouse perspective, from a outside standpoint, I'm not sure. Now, players who have played with Bauer have said he's not a clubhouse issue. They've all gotten along with him as a teammate. But because of but
I would not go that far. I'll let you finish your thought, but I have a counterpoint to that.
But the media circus and all of the issues he's going to bring with him because of his now history is going to be a much larger issue. And again, I don't think it's worth I don't know. I'm not going to be like chomping at the bit to go buy tickets to go see this guy pitch because I don't really care. Now, if he helps my team, if we end up signing him and he helps my team win some games, great. But I could care. Like, I'm going to disassociate him with my team because I don't really want to be associated with him.
Right. And so I will say that some of the charges that he faced have been dismissed, and I don't want to go into that history. That's not why we're here. But the counterpoint that I was going to say, even away from the whole, off the field issues from his time with the Dodgers, the issue I have with him is the fact that if you actually look into a lot of his teammates and their comments about him, he has been pretty universally disliked at every stop he's been at. People like that he's winning, but his off the field antics, his things that he does in the clubhouse, like he just rubs a lot of them the wrong way. He's also the kind of person who is so absolutely convinced that he is always right that he can't accept that there's differing viewpoints, and then that rubs other people around the team the wrong way. And he's not a person who I think fits the Cardinals culture of the team first. And so like that alone is why I'm against them.
My concern with that is, we are bringing in players like Matt Carpenter, which the more I think about and the more I analyze the Matt Carpenter signing, the less issue I have with it. Again, my biggest issue is the fact that we have to bring him in to be a leader because we don't have them is the issue. But the fact that we're bringing in people like Matt Carpenter, the fact that we're looking for leadership and to rebuild our clubhouse culture, he doesn't fit into that at all.
Right.
Which is
Exactly.
again essentially what you said, paraphrasing, right? But I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's he doesn't fit the culture. He doesn't fit what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. And how do you look at that and address that? It's a whole thing. Again, if they signed him, yeah, I'm going to disassociate. I'm going to pretend like he's not really part of my team. But again, if you're looking for a low-cost signing that could be an impact pitcher for you for a few years, go sign Brandon Woodruff. You already have your rotation locked up this year. Go sign the guy that has zero issues going on with his background, other than he has some injuries that he's trying to recover from. But when healthy is an absolute ace, and let him get healthy. And we've got 2 older pitchers on 1-year contracts. So if one of them doesn't work out, we cut him loose after a year, and we already have his replacement in-house waiting.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't think the Cardinals will sign Bauer. I just wanted to bring it up because it was something we were seeing a lot of chatter about.
You had it on the outline, and if you didn't, I was going to put it on there. So it's
so perfect. There we go. But were you going to write puke at the end of it like I did?
I was not going to write puke. I was going to put Trevor Bauer with a bunch of question marks.
That's also acceptable.
So here's the other fun thing that's coming out is both ESPN and The Athletic, and you, John, you know how much I love The Athletic. I know how much you love The Athletic.
Big
Katie
fans.
Wu, if you ever listen to us, please come on and talk to us. Anybody from The Athletic, really, come talk to us because we love you guys over there.
You can cover
you guys are doing great work.
We'll make it work.
Yeah, I don't care if it's St. Louis. I mean, if someone from The Athletic from another team wants to talk to us, we'll do it. We'll talk to you.
Absolutely.
More importantly, the prospect rankings, both ESPN and The Athletic, realistically have us kind of in the middle of the pack as far as where our farm system ranks for the Cardinals. ESPN had us 18th. I'm trying to remember where exactly The Athletic had us, but I want to say they
20th.
were 20th. Okay, I was like,
believe, yeah.
I was like somewhere between 18 and 22, so that was close.
Right. Yeah, you were right on.
So we have a few players. We had 3 players in the top 100 for The Athletic. We only had 2 players in the top 100 for ESPN, but that third player being number 101 in ESPN. Right. But we also had numbers 104, 110, and 147. So we ended up with 6 total top prospects in the ESPN 150. Obviously, Mason Wynn is topping a lot of those lists. Where he's at and where he falls. Mason Wynn is not going to really be a prospect anymore, so he's boosting these rankings for us right now, but I don't consider him a prospect. He's somebody who I feel like his athleticism, his speed, and his glove are going to play, and as he comes along offensively, if he has a good offensive season, he's going to compete for Rookie of the Year. And if he's having if the rest of our team is having good good season offensively, he's going to get pitches to hit, which is only going to help him. And I think so it's so important for the guys that need to have big seasons to have them. And so I think that's important.
And not only that, but like when you look at our lineup, like as far as Mason Wynn goes, like he's going to be a bottom of the lineup guy in our lineup. And like he's got some power and he's definitely got some speed. Like he's like when you're talking about a guy who's going to be fitting into the 7, 8, 9 spot of your lineup with his skills and his tools, like that's pretty solid. The other part, as far as our prospect rankings go, is like we have to remember that Jordan Walker like no longer is part of that, right? He has graduated to it. So these rankings are always a snapshot in time as guys are developing, and when guys move up like that, it's always a pipeline, right? The guys at the top of the list start moving up and other people move into their spots. And that's, we've just moved a lot of people up to the majors.
Well, think about the last couple of years. I mean, Brendan Donovan's another guy, right? I mean,
yeah.
So it makes sense.
Nolan Gorman, right? Like
the teams that you typically see at the top of these rankings, the teams that you see are teams that just sold off all of their stuff for prospects to try to rebuild, or teams that are perennially losers. So they have tons of top draft picks. So they stock up on these top talent. It's just
which is what happened with the Orioles.
Or take your pick and you could just be the Tampa Bay Rays. And for whatever reason, you're always in the top 10 because you have a ridiculous scouting department.
Yeah. Well, I think the Orioles have a ridiculous scouting department now. I am very high on Orioles.
They had like 3 number 1 picks over in like a 5-year span, so that helps.
Yeah, but you still have to hit on each of those, and that's a lot harder in baseball than it is in other sports.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Holliday was a consensus number 1, right? Like,
yeah, but they also had Adley Rutschman, and then what was the other guy?
I'm playing devil's advocate here, but
well, that's fine. But you don't have to.
You have to be. But you have to have the number 1 pick to be able to hit the number 1 pick. Is what
that's why I said,
right. Like,
right.
Well,
and I even said that's why
right?
the Orioles, like as soon as you said or you lost, that's exactly what happened to the Orioles.
Yeah.
They consistently lost, and then they hit on all their picks. Yeah, Nationals
won the World Series a few years ago, but a lot of those guys they had that were key members of that team were top draft picks during the seasons that they were last in the major leagues every year.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
A couple other guys to highlight on our prospect rankings before we kind of jump. Again, we are also last in our division in prospect rankings, but that's not something I'm super concerned about, because the rest of our division is perennially terrible, and they've had higher draft picks and or sold off all their assets, like the Brewers getting fleeced by the aforementioned Orioles, or as some like to call them, the St. Louis Browns.
That's right. My family's history with the St. Louis Browns. Like,
I do know that.
Yeah. If I had to have if I had to pick an AL team, I think I'd pick the Orioles.
So speaking of family history with baseball, and I'll throw a fun anecdote story in here. So I told the story about my great grandpa getting the hit off Dizzy Dean. His wife, my great grandma. So during the Great Depression, they'd moved to St. Louis for some work before they moved back down to the Boot Heel for their farming business. And Tuesdays were Ladies' Day at the ballpark, where ladies got in. Was it for free or for like $1 or something for the game? Right. She apparently only missed one Tuesday game for the Cardinals the entire time they were in St. Louis, and she absolutely. So she went blind. By the time I actually knew my great grandma, she was blind. Right. But if there was a Cardinals game on, even as I was growing up, that Cardinals game was on in the background on the radio every single day.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have talked offline a lot too, that like, as far as the calling of the game goes, the radio format, at least for the Cardinals, is so much better.
It's just so TV. It's so solid, and it's nothing that it's not that. And we have decent TV announcers, but we have our radio announcers are so good, and so like sometimes and they have to be descriptive, right? I mean, that's part of radio,
right? But sometimes I'll turn the audio off on the game and turn on the radio, and and if I can get it synced up, I'll listen to the radio while watching the game. But sometimes you can't get the audio synced to work, and
if you have something, if you're streaming on something like YouTube TV, it's great because you can pause, start the radio and then pause it for a moment to get it kind of synced up enough to where it's right on top. Again, back to the prospect list. Other prospects are other top prospects: Team Ken's Victor Scott, as you like to call 2, but Victor Scott the second.
Victor Scott 2, yes.
Tekoa Roby, who was one of the guys we got in the trade for Monty, along with Thomas Sagassi, who is another, also came over in that trade.
Who was dominant in the minors last year.
And then we've got guys like Chase Davis, Michael McGreevy, Cooper Sherpy, I can never say his name. Leonardo Bernal, the catcher, who they say is going to be a big league catcher sooner than later.
Well, are they still considering Herrera a minor league player?
No, Herrera has graduated as well. Another player that's graduated out of this list.
I mean, like we know that he's going to be playing in the majors this year, but I didn't know if he was still on this list. Who, by the way, is dominating the Caribbean Cup right now, or whatever they call the Caribbean Classic. I think they just lost actually today and are out. But he had at one point he had like a 1.6 OPS, which means that he was basically only hitting home runs.
So one of the things that I love about ESPN's ranking, by the way, is that
Yeah.
they put notable graduations from last year off the list.
Oh, that's
So you've
nice.
got Jordan Walker, Ivan Herrera, Alec Burleson, Matthew Libator, Zach Tompkins, Lucan Baker, Nick Robertson, Jose Fermin, and Buddy Kennedy.
Yeah. So at least a handful of those guys are like legitimately, should be
Yes.
good at the MLB level. Um, Speaking of different articles, though, I have two articles I want to talk about from The Athletic, and I'm curious if you read them. So the first one here would be the Katie Wu fan survey, who she had like 3,000 respondents. Did you get a chance to check that one out?
I responded to the survey, but I did
Yeah.
not read the article
It's
yet.
it's nothing surprising. There are some like really great like one-liners in it. But it's everything that we've said on the show, that Cardinals media have said, like people who cover the Cardinals, like that it's not enough, that we've lost our way, that that the sport has evolved, but the Cardinals haven't. She did ask some really good questions, as you would know, as since you filled it out. Talking about like, if you judge Mozeliak on, his whole career, like how would you rate him if you would, you know, do the same thing with the DeWitt's ownership? How would you rate him across the entire time they've owned it? Which I thought was rather insightful. But yeah, it was a really good article. I would highly advise anyone with an athletics subscription to go read it, because there are some pretty good insights once you get past the fact that we're all still pretty pissed about how last year went and not necessarily optimistic in the moves we've made since.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're still running it, but I know around the first of the year, the Athletic was putting, it was like $1 a month or something for the first year, which
Yeah,
is
I
when
had an
I
ad
signed
for
up.
it.
Whenever they did that initially is when I signed up
Yeah,
for it. But
and then
and
you
I didn't
kept it
even.
because it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's. I mean, I read their stuff all the time. So
Right. The other
you said there was
article,
two. Yeah, I was going to say
there
you
was
said
two.
there was two.
So there's another one written today by the Athletic MLB staff. So basically, a combination of all the writers for MLB, and it was MLB offseason grades. Which teams passed and which teams failed. So 10-second yes or no, but not a yes or no question. What grade would you give the Cardinals for their offseason moves this year?
B minus.
Oh, that's maybe a little bit better than I would give. They gave the team a C. I think I probably would give them a C plus. But yeah, and it's again the same stuff that we've said.
They
Old
addressed the
pitchers,
needs, but they could
right?
have been. They again.
They could
They
have
could have
had
done
better
better.
upgrades. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they do win a cost efficiency award from me if I had that award to give out. One thing I will say, so last year in 2023, the Cardinals as a team had 48 quality starts. So that's what you pitch 5 innings and I think allow less than 2 runs. Is that
It's
there's a
two. I think
run
it's
cutoff?
is it 5 and 2 or
It's
less, or is
definitely
it
five
six
innings.
and
I think it's
three for quality? I'm
you have
googling
to
quality
pitch
start.
through the
Continue.
5th inning.
Continue
Yeah,
talking through
look
their
that up
thing.
for me. So anyway, 48 across the whole team. Our 3 main additions, Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, had 47. 6 and 3.
6 and 3. I was right.
Oh, interesting. So anyway, 6 and 3.
You have to pitch 5 to qualify for the win. Is probably what you're thinking of.
Yeah, that is what I was thinking of. So there is that. The other thing, as far as the pitchers go, like, yeah, their ERAs were not great last year, but they were all, a one run, maybe 2 runs better than a lot of the guys we ran out last year. And we lost a lot of games by like 1 run. So we don't have to improve that much to get better results.
I think
But still underwhelming.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is we talk a lot about how it hurt our bullpen, how it hurt the pitching, how it kind of ran people down early on. We don't talk a lot about how it puts so much more pressure on the hitters to try to make magic happen and pull people out of their comfort zone.
Hitting is all about comfort, for sure. Yeah. That's a great call out.
So speaking of comfort and making magic happen, we did have the NHL All-Star game over the
We
past
did.
week. And our very own Robert Thomas got to partake in his first ever All-Star game. Was picked. They made it to the final in their 3v3 tournament, but lost in the final. I want to take a minute to give a shout out to the All-Star team goalies, who were essentially just getting absolutely shellacked with pucks during these games.
Right.
It is a
Right.
3v3, which essentially just means it's a 2-on-1 odd man rush. Hey,
Yep.
brace yourself because you're about to get pelted with another shot.
Right.
And
by the way,
entirety of these games.
everyone can score very easily. So
Oh, also,
enjoy.
yeah, it's the best of the best. So have fun.
Right.
I was a little.
It.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think it's interesting. All I'm going to say is, if I was a goalie and I got picked for the All-Star game, I'd be like, "Thanks for the selection, but I'm out."
Right. You know what? I've got like a few weeks I could just rest, and it turns
not
out
get pelted
that,
with giant rubber pellets.
Yeah, that are flying at 120 miles per hour or whatever. Like, nah, I'm good. Thanks. You guys have fun.
It's all you, man. You know who would love to do that? My backup.
That's right. That's right. He needs some game time. So, I was a little sad that Thomas didn't get to participate in any skills competitions, but you know, whatever. It's like literally a thing that doesn't matter. But
I think the thing that was frustrating with the skills competition piece is there was a couple players who were very evidently not taking it seriously. And it's one of those like, okay, if you're not going to take it seriously, let somebody who is do it kind of thing. Like just say, no, I'm good. And that's fine. It is what it is. You know, they were great. They did their thing, but that's just my piece. Some teams have already returned from their All-Star break and started playing it again. Because some teams got to start their break earlier than others. The St. Louis Blues, however, do not start back, and they will be back on Saturday with their first game back, which is exciting to see.
Yeah, and it's also a weird one in that it's a noon game as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not at night; it's in the middle of the day, which is different. But you know, whatever. What do we have? Oh, speaking of games, though. Big news came out this week about the Winter Classic next year. In that, it will be Blues against the Blackhawks at Wrigley Field, which I think is awesome. Awesome. And if I can afford it, I am 100% going to go. Which the irony of this, too, is that I might watch a Blues game at Wrigley Field before I watch a Cardinals game at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, so. I think it's interesting. I'm excited about the Winter Classic. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that, and I can't remember which team we're tied with, but we are currently tied with a 2-0 record as the only undefeated teams in the Winter Classic that have won more than one. Is it 3-0?
It's 3-0, I believe. But the Blackhawks are 0-4. I just saw this like the other day.
No, you're good.
Record, Winter Classic.
So
no, 2-0.
Anyway,
what the fuck was I looking at?
So how about you
Maybe
stop questioning me?
No,
so
I'm going to keep questioning.
If they move to 3-0, they'll be the only. Right. They'll have the
only
best record as undefeated. That's what it is. And undefeated.
Now they have scored the most goals in Winter Classics, I believe, with 10.
Yeah. In 2 games, and I think the Blackhawks have like 6 in 6 games or in 4 games or something
4 games,
stupid.
Yeah. But like 8 and 4.
Either way,
like that, yeah.
So here's the question: if we win the Winter Classic in Wrigley, right?
Okay,
we win the Winter Classic. Are we the best Winter Classic team?
I mean, how can you argue against that? We will have the most goals, right? Because we're already the most goals, and so if we score any more, still the most goals, and we would be the first 3-0 team. So yeah, GOAT status, Winter Classic games.
I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at and by friends I mean friend, and use
Jacob.
that term loosely. Jacob posted his jersey ideas for the Winter Classic.
Really? I'm going to look that up. Did he post it?
It
Keep
was
going.
posted. It was posted
Oh,
earlier
I think
tonight.
I saw it.
One of them was really great, and it actually had the Blues Fan Forum podcast logo
I would
right in the
buy it.
middle of the jersey.
Jacob, if you're listening, I would buy this. Hey, clip this too. Make it a reel. Let them know. Jacob, tag him in it. I'd buy it.
So anyway, there's a thing where you can just click the little button on the screen that says mark clip, and I can go back and clip it later.
Yeah, that's fine. You're the video producer. I'm the content producer, so that's all on you. So,
but I'm excited to see what jersey we get. If it's as good as the last couple, it's going to be a must-buy jersey probably for me. But I've got a little time to save.
Is going to be one. Yeah.
I've got a little time to save up, so that's nice.
Right.
Some sad news on the Blues front. We did just put Kevin Falk on the injured reserve with a lower body injury. They did not. They said they did clarify. Bannister did that he is not. It's not a re-aggravation of another injury. It was a new injury from the game. Perunovic is also still out, although he's more of a week-to-week kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
And Bannister also said in the same press conference that he foresees Perunovic being back before fall.
Yeah, I saw that too. Now, and of course, you might be asking yourself, well, what happened to Falk? Well, like most injuries in the NHL, we don't know. It is a lower body injury of undisclosed nature.
Could be anything from he rolled his ankle to stubbed his pinky toe to he took a hockey puck to his dick.
To he dislocated his shoulder. So
no. That's not a lower body injury.
Yeah, but they call everything a lower body injury, even though it's not.
They'll say upper body injury. If it's anything like chest or up, it's an upper body injury.
No, I understand human anatomy, but they don't call it that. They always just call it a lower body injury.
My favorite is when somebody clearly just suffered a concussion and they show up in the injury report and just say upper body injury.
Right. Yeah. I wonder what that was.
He literally just took a puck to the temple.
Right.
And was unconscious for 5 minutes.
Right.
Upper body injury.
Day
to day. What do you mean he's day to day? He was literally dead on the ice. Hockey players are a different breed, man.
Right. Well, and the sport, as far as some of that stuff goes, the sport does need to evolve a little bit to protect the players, because in general, hockey players are willing to take risks that like other people think are, stupid. So I do think like the net guards, I think that's like a no-brainer that they need to add, things like that. But yeah. And I believe I saw today that they called Rosen back up, right?
Correct.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that. They did call up Callie Rosen to help fill in why we've got some people out. I think it's interesting. So we went into this break for the All-Star game, holding on to that wild card spot, looking, promising. If you had told me even a couple weeks before the All-Star game that we'd gone into the break holding that spot, I would have called, if you've ever seen the video with the kid in the back of the car, bullshit. But they surprised me, and they surprised everyone with that winning streak. Although, again, came right back down to earth against of all teams, the Blue Jackets. And, how do you how do you work through that kind of thing? I mean, like, again, it's that same up and down crap that we've seen from them all season. Trade deadline's a month out. Actually, a month out from today or like 12 hours ago today. So what the only reason I know when the trade deadline is because it's on my wife's birthday, which is bad, but, or I know when my wife's birthday is because I know when the trade deadline is. You figure that out at home.
Yeah, I thought about it, and then I was like, I got other things going on right now.
So anyway, trade deadline, we're in a wild card spot. Ideally, we'll have a better idea over the next couple of weeks coming out of this break how we're playing. If you sell, what do you sell? And if you buy, what do you buy? And those are those two questions I know I threw into the outline here a little late for you, but where do you go, right? If you sell, what are you going to sell? Who do you sell? Who can you sell? And without mortgaging your future, because I think the Blues have made it clear that they don't want to do a complete rebuild. They're more looking to potentially continue the, as they're putting it, a retool over the next year or so.
So I still think that if you're going to buy anything, you probably need to buy some more defensemen, particularly someone who maybe you can slot into your first line or whichever line you're going to put Kyrou on to help provide more cover for him. But I mean, I would not leverage the future of this team right now. The prospect rankings for the Blues tend to be very high on the prospects we have. I'm sure you follow a lot of the same pages that I follow, that, you know, I'm seeing highlights from a lot of our guys like all the time from Blues prospects. We talked previously about the God, I can't think of the name of the tournament now, but the, you know, hockey's version of the World Cup, whatever it's called, where we had, you know, a Blues player in every medal winning team. Like, the future of this team is pretty bright, and the, you know, it's kind of rough in the short term now, but I think, you know, I don't want to give up any of these pieces that all look like quality players that we're going to be relying on once they get to that point. So
Well,
that's
I
me.
agree. You're thinking of the World Juniors.
Yes, thank you.
Snuggerud and Zach Bolduc are two guys that come to mind as far as players that I'm super excited to see what they're going to do at the next level. But what I'm more, I agree. I think the only reason you make a trade is if you are selling away a piece that brings back something for the future. You're not you know, you're selling away those pieces. I don't see you as a buyer because you're not in a win now mode. Your team
Right.
has shown, we have shown all year that we are inconsistent and we are not going to get the job done. And that sounds really, it's hard to say and hard to admit, but it is what it is. There's no need to go out and buy a bunch of high price stuff and, like you said, mortgage your future. The only thing that I see us doing at the trade deadline, I see us either standing pat if we don't get any good offers, or I could see us selling some of our players. And I'm thinking of players more on the defense, if they're, you know, assuming they don't have no trade clauses that they're not going to waive, that could open up the door for some of our younger defenders to come up, or, you know, some role players that maybe would help, that another contending team is looking for, where maybe we get an extra prospect or two, or we get a young defenseman who hasn't had the time to fully develop. But I really do not see this being an active trade deadline for the Blues at all.
No, I don't. I think they mostly stand pat. Any moves that they make are going to be relatively minor moves. Like, I mean, you're in a playoff spot, and for a team that was not expected to be in a playoff spot, right? Like we have to be clear that, you know, the expectations by, you know, before the season were probably that they were going to be on the outside looking in, and they're comfortably in the spot right now. Like, they have several games in hand on like most of the teams behind them.
You know,
Like,
you keep saying that nobody expected him to be here, but I remember a bet at the beginning of the season where somebody said they should get to 93 points and be competing for a playoff spot.
okay, one person did. Actually, two, because Jacob also said that he probably would have taken that over at the beginning of the season as well. Which, speaking of the bet update, so they are in contention for a playoff spot, but that was not the bet. The bet was the points total, and they are on pace for 90 points.
Yep.
So
that loss pushed us off pace. If we had got the win, we would have been right where we needed to be.
Right. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bet that I do hope to lose, but, you know, if I win and I was right, I win and I was right. Now, best case scenario is they get 92 points and make the playoffs, and you have to give me beer and I still get to celebrate them going into the playoffs. That is like the best case scenario for me.
Best case scenario for you, but I don't care about what you want. So I hope we get 93 points. And to be honest, because I don't think we're going to do anything in the playoffs, I'd rather us hit 93 points and miss the playoffs and get a better draft pick.
Yeah, no, I want a ticket. I want a
No,
ticket to the game every year.
Let's be honest, though. It wouldn't matter. I mean, we're talking a couple of draft pick difference. It's not like we're talking the 20th versus the first. Again, I think the trade deadline will be interesting to see. I think if you start seeing us selling pieces, you know exactly what Army's thinking.
Sure.
But, not everyone utilizes trades well. But do you know who has used trades pretty well? And it looks like it may already be paying off?
I'm going to go out on a very strong limb here and say St. Louis City SC / Loot Found and Steel. Very good trades.
I would say he's done pretty good with his trades so far. Really just the one big trade.
Well, you say that, but he has, made a lot of valuable trades for our favorite player, international slot. So.
Well, and honestly, if you look back to the trade for Marcanic, it was a pretty solid trade for us.
Great
so, I mean,
trade.
The guy knows what he's doing. Most recently, Chris Durkin, who is, looking to be a solid player for us and somebody who's going to be able to play a lot of valuable minutes in our midfield. We had some friendlies recently, both in LA, where the weather's although our weather here has been pretty pleasant recently.
We've had that LA weather this week.
We have had LA, well, not quite LA weather, but closer to LA weather.
Close enough.
And but they've been out there in LA playing out there. Chris Durkin had a rocket in that first game for the first goal of the game.
Yeah, that was phenomenal, and it was on a volley too, on a rebound. And I mean, we scored a lot of goals last year like that, right? And one of the critiques I think that you hear sometimes from people who cover soccer for St. Louis City is it's like, well, they're not really creating these chances, quote unquote, pretty soccer wise. They're just ripping shots at the net and eventually they score, or it gets a rebound in a dangerous spot and then they, tap it in or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you can argue against that, but like when things are hectic and chaotic in the box, like chances are created. And like, that's kind of how our team is built. And I'm okay with that because it's exciting and it's fun. And that's exactly what Durkin's goal was. It was a rebound. And not only that, actually, I do have to give him, he did way more than just rip this shot into the back of the net. He also had gotten an interception, carried it up the field, got fouled, and then Indy takes the free kick and goes for goal, and it gets blocked and rebounds and falls at Durkin's feet, where it doesn't really hit his feet because it's in the air because it's a volley, but
hits
rips
his
the shot.
Foot.
It's his foot, yeah. And it was nasty. It was an awesome goal.
Yeah. And good thing Parker wasn't offside.
Yeah. So I think he.
So it goes back. We had a similar play
offside, but he's not. But he's participating in the play.
He's not participating in the play. He's in an offside position. He doesn't participate in the play, and he's wide of the goal, so he's not interfering with the goalie. So we had a similar issue, and actually they looked at it and said there was not interference, and I don't remember which game it was where Berkey wanted the interference. And they didn't. And the guy was actually in front of the goal. In this case, Parker wasn't even in front of the goal, at least from the angle. Again, the angles aren't great in this preseason. From what I could tell, he was not.
For that one, that was a late game. That could have been Seattle, actually. That was a later
late
game.
In the year. It was like in September.
After the game, I think Tom Timmerman asked him about it, and Berkey said, like, no, I know he wasn't interfering with me, but I have to,
but
argue
he was
that
close
to the
enough
ref and see if they'll give it to me.
Exactly. Right. It was like he's close enough and he's in the position where I might be able to win this, right?
And that's, these guys' jobs, right? And they get paid, some of them, Berkey gets paid a lot of money for this type of thing.
Rightfully
I'm not going to
fault the guy's worth every penny, but
probably worth more than we're paying for him, to be honest.
So back to the LA Galaxy game real quick. So Durkin scores the game winner. Halftime, we sub off our entire team, bring in
Normal
an
preseason.
entirely new team, which is fine. Galaxy does not. They leave majority of their starters. They only make 2, maybe 3 changes. So essentially what they would have normally done, their game
Right.
changes
Yeah, I think
to
they
get
made
those
changes
guys
at like the
minutes with where they
60th
were.
minute. Yeah.
They scored a goal, tied it up, and then they brought in their second squad after
Mm-hmm.
that. But our second squad against their second squad, if you will, we ended up getting another goal and winning 2-1. Thor scored that goal. He looked great, but again, playing against at that point was second squatters, so it's hard
Well,
to.
let's
He looked good. I'm not trying to. I say second squad. They're guys that
right.
are going to get MLS minutes. I just don't want
Well,
to over some of them. I just don't.
some of
If
them.
there were,
Yeah.
I just don't want to overreact to his goal. But the play, the setup to it was nice.
Right.
We had some of our young guys played, and they looked good. Again, they didn't just blow me out of the water, but they looked good and they looked solid.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I'll say about that second squad is this is not like second squad, like second string on the depth chart guys. These are guys playing with like LA Galaxy 2 second squad. A fair amount of them were. So some of them may get, some decent minutes in MLS, but there were a lot of academy kids out there for LA Galaxy at that point. And so, yeah, Thor and AZ should look dominant against them, and they did. And I think Blom was out there at the time. Blom looked fine, normal. The thing I did like about Thor's goal was that AZ, well, first off, Johnny Nelson, good old Johnny Nelson, played for us. You guys might remember him. Had an absolutely amazing run against FC Cincinnati. But Johnny Nelson did kind of the thing that we saw Johnny Nelson do a lot, which is give the ball up in a very dangerous area in, his defensive third. And AZ capitalized on it and kind of, brings it more central, right? Thor makes a great run kind of to the wing, top of the box on the right side. AZ does a well-weighted ball right in front of him, and Thor slots it to the back post. I liked that in the sense that I really liked how they were, together and same thought process. I like the finishing touch that Thor had. I do want to point out that like MLS starters probably aren't going to allow like any number of things on that play to happen. But you take the opportunities you get.
I mean, we say that, you would also assume that MLS starters wouldn't back pass to the wrong team multiple times in this. So
yes, that's true. Which
you never know what's going to show up at your feet.
Right. So we have to talk also about about our UPSL Academy team if we get a chance, because they scored at the death in the semifinal game on a pass like that, which was just so typical St. Louis City. But of the younger guys that you watched in LA Galaxy, who did you think stood out positively and who do you think stood out negatively?
And you're gonna laugh at me because I'm a few drinks in and had a lot, but McSorley looked like somebody who is fighting for a spot in playing time.
Yep.
And looked like he was somebody ready to make things happen. And he stood out to me as the positive young guy, as I'm here, I'm ready to make things happen. Lovingly called by Tim Parker McScorley, but
well, apparently it's the whole team, but Parker is particularly emphatic about it. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I thought he looked great. I was excited to see him play. And it was, again, he was the guy who stood out to me the most. Who's our center back, the young guy?
Vincel. Michael Vincel. Yeah.
Michael Vincel looked like he could use a loan to a USL club for a while. At times out there, he needs minutes, and he's not ready for MLS minutes.
Right,
is what I saw. Again, short sample size. We're talking 45 minutes. So, like, to draw any conclusions from 45 minutes, there was 45-minute stretches where any number of our players last year looked like they didn't belong in MLS. So, like, but if you're asking me from what I saw, those were the ones. Again, people like Kojima looked fine. Like, they looked like decent players. They didn't wow me or blow me away, but they also didn't do anything to make me think, oh, there's no way you're going to make it.
Yeah, I thought Kojima looked good. I thought Kojima looked, better than the academy players he was playing against, which is a good sign. I don't think he was man of the match or anything, but he had good touches when the ball was at his feet. He looked solid, and I thought he was playing very high motor, very high energy, which is how we play. I know you had mentioned that your sons were kind of jumping all over you while you were trying to watch the game. And so you, I think, missed some of these moments, but there were several moments with Caden Glover where I was really impressed, and not so much, as a striker necessarily. They were all like kind of in midfield, but where he was, being swarmed by 3 or 4 guys and was, somehow holding 1 to 2 of them off and, doing spins and light touches to manipulate himself out of the close quarters duels that they're trying to engage him in. And then he gets a nice pass out of it. Which, like, if you think about how he could possibly fit in for this team, like Nico did a lot of that when he was paired up with Klaus, right? Like they played off of each other a lot in those kinds of ways. And I'm not saying he's ready for MLS minutes week in, week out, but that was very nice to see. And you can see why not just our team, but also the U.S. youth national team is very high on his ability with that.
But yeah, I thought he was the other one who I felt like, along with Kojima, who looked like they belonged, but wasn't somebody who just blew me away.
Right. So we did have the second game too. Oh, and City won that game against the Galaxy 2-1, but it's preseason, results don't matter. It's not the same thing as a real game. But then we also played LAFC at the time of recording yesterday, now on Wednesday. We did win that game 1-0. Did you get to watch that game? I have not watched it yet. I am going to watch the replay. I've been reading. I read a lot of reactions online.
I need to watch the replay as well because it was while I was at work, where the LA Galaxy game was on the weekend, so it was a little easier for me to catch.
A little bit easier to catch, yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, when states at your hospital, they frown on you streaming games. So, whatever.
Same thing happens when Joint Commission shows up, if you don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I've been through several Joint Commission surveys at facilities, so I am well aware how that works.
Well aware,
but, yeah. Try being the guy in charge of the department when they roll in.
Nah, I'd rather not. I have more fun doing my job.
You get pulled into even more things, but more importantly, LAFC, you shared it into the fan pages as a. Under our page, as in, Kyle, where you've been hiding this touch at. But Kyle Hebert absolutely rocks this shot.
Yeah. And that's not even the angle that I like the most. I'll try to send you another angle that makes it look even.
That's what she said.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That is what she said. But it's another rebound, and he catches it again on the volley, and he just completely roots Hugo Lloris like to the spot. And like watching the clip of what happened, my thought was this kind of shit could only happen in MLS, where like a backup center back who always looks so uncomfortable with the ball anywhere near him, except for like when he's heading it somewhere, is going to root a world champion goalkeeper to the spot for a goal. Like that doesn't happen elsewhere. That's only an MLS and CONCACAF play where that kind of crap happens. So I thought that was funny. We did initially start off with a group of guys that, apart from Berkey, are guys that I think we expect initially to be backups or City 2 players this year. And they went 60 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes, we kind of ran out what was a little bit closer to a top 11 lineup. Both of these games did not have Leuven, did not have Nielsen, who we previously talked about. They're still in their home countries trying to finalize their green cards.
And they may be back in the U.S., but it was known that they were not going to travel all the way out to L.A. after that. So if anybody's listening, like, oh, well, I heard that they're back in St. Louis. fine. They're just but it was known that they were not making the LA trip.
Right. Well, and I think they might play Saturday against New York if they're available. But I don't think they're not going to go out there when their stuff is done. But it also could have been like they came in yesterday. Like they're not going to fly out and play in the afternoon. But anyway, so a couple of thoughts on that. BC has said previously anyone who goes 60 minutes is 90-minute fit in his mind at this point. So all the backups went 60 minutes. So, okay, so they're all in theory 90 minutes, and you would have to imagine if the backups can play 60 minutes, that most of the starters can play 60 minutes. But the other thought I had is, okay, so our backups went 60 minutes, and I still have some things that I want to say about how those guys played from what I've heard. But you have to imagine that we play again on Saturday, so 3 days later. The starters are probably going to go 60 minutes in that game. So that game on Saturday is going to be against New York Red Bulls, right? So BC had some other quotes that I thought were really interesting throughout the preseason, where he's talked a lot about how, in addition to our high press system, they are trying to add new wrinkles, trying to evolve and adapt a little bit, because last year we struggled a lot when we had to play with the ball. Well, if you're going to play a team that does not want the ball and is going to try to, get you to do things with it, the New York Red Bulls are one of those teams that will never take the ball. So I thought it was really interesting that he's going to give the starters most of their minutes against a team that doesn't want to play with the ball. I think that's, a chance to give them game time in a game that doesn't matter, to work on those kinds of possession fundamentals.
I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to bring this up because I was hoping this is what was going to happen when we played against the Red Bulls. Because I think same thing, right? I think it's going to be, we are purposely, I caught the part where our starters came in at the end, and I'm like, which means our starters are starting the next game, which to me, again, screams that we want to practice. What are we going to do when we have the ball at our feet?
Right. And granted, that game changes dramatically playing with the ball if we don't have Leuven for those 60 minutes. Like that's a huge part of that because of how we distribute. And
I still think it'll be interesting too if that's the starters. If we roll out our quote unquote starters, is to see where does Carnell put Leuven? Does he put him at the 10? Does he put him down lower in a double pivot? Where does he actually play him? What lineup does he go with? I think this game against Red Bulls is going to give us a lot of insight as to what we might see as far as our lineup to kind of start the season.
Yeah. And I'm very interested in that same.
And by start the season, I mean Champions Cup, because that's what matters.
Right. Exactly. We're not going to talk about it this week, but next week we are going to have another special guest episode, and we're going to talk a fair amount about Champions Cup, I think. And by I think, I mean I know, because I write the outline, or most of it.
I was like, hey now,
you added some stuff to this one. I'm proud of you.
I actually had time to between.
That it helps. It makes a huge difference when you have less shit going on.
You know what? Come after May, when I'm done with school again, as I said for the last time I finished a degree and said I was never going back. This time when I finish my degree, I'm never going back. I say again. But once that's done again, I'll have a lot more free time to play around with outlines and do more of this stuff. Right. So that'll be fun.
But anyway, back to what I was saying.
Nobody cares what you were saying, but continue.
You care what I was saying. Durkin and Blom and Leuven maybe higher up. I'm very intrigued by that, because Durkin has been playing very, very well. I kind of thought that Durkin was going to be more of a traditional defensive midfielder, not necessarily in the same manner that Blom is, who is, very physical, very, go in for the tackle and win the ball back. I think Durkin is a little bit more savvy, a little bit more looking for the interception and the quick pass out of it. But he seems to be, a little bit better with distribution than Blom is, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. So I am interested about seeing them together, with Leuven ahead of them. Because the other thing that I was going to talk about next week a little bit more is, what do we do with Akil Watts, right? Like, I'm not saying, I don't know if Nerwinski or Watts is the presumed number 2, but it seems like Nerwinski's gotten a lot of right back minutes and Watts has gotten none, I think, so far in preseason.
I
He's
wanted
gotten
to
left back
highlight
minutes.
something. Yeah, I was about to say, one of the things that I saw in the LA Galaxy game was that he was on the left side and he looked good over there.
Yeah, I think he got left back minutes against Nashville too, which wasn't strange, but I think I saw him in the out, like, you know how they list the players for the lineup, and where he was listed would normally be where they list the left back. But I think he's going to, you know, be that second or third, you know, defensive midfielder a lot, which we saw him play last year. But if we roll Durkin and Blom out, like, that could be, like, Watts could be the guy to come in to sub him. And I don't think we're going to do that for a while because we have so much fixture congestion, but like that could be, you know, where that ends up in midseason.
Yeah, no, I think having taking the time again, and for those of you who are bracing yourselves, maybe a multi-episode week next week where we recaps what's going on with the Blues and Cardinals with spring training later in the week, but early on,
2-episode week.
But we're going to have a city focused episode as a preview, as we do have a guest coming on to discuss some of those early season things and what to expect, some of the preview things with St. Louis City. And I think the depth and how we make sure these guys are getting minutes is going to be one of the more difficult challenges for Carnell if this fixture congestion eases up.
Right.
So I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see who he plays with the starters if he only goes with one of Durkin or Blom too.
Right. I'm really excited. I think next week is going to be a fun one. But another tournament that I wanted to talk about, in addition to Champions Cup, which you just alluded to, is the Leagues Cup, right? So we know that that's a tournament that we will be participating in because it's MLS's, you know, money child, for lack of a better term. So last year, City, quote unquote, got embarrassed in the Leagues Cup because we lost to Columbus and we lost to Club America, who, it should be noted, both won their leagues last year, and we were stuck in a group with them. So, I mean, not really feeling that bad about it. I mean, the Club America game was brutal, but beside the point.
You know, I'm going to take this time to highlight, there was a highlight in that Club America game.
Celio Pompeu looked like the best player on the pitch. Well, our team at least.
Celio Pompeu looked amazing, and cue my daily chug for Celio Pompeu, my man.
That's right. You got to fit him in at least once. And, you know, we actually did not mention him for either game, but he, you know, I think he's looked fine when I've been able to watch him out there.
He's looked good. He's creating chances.
He's looked fit.
He's definitely been ready to play. He's definitely looks to be in game shape. And honestly, I'm excited to see what he's going to do offensively with the ball this year.
Yeah, me too. Like, we're going to talk probably way too much about him next week.
I'll make sure of it.
But anyway, last year was seeded based off of previous year's position, essentially. Well, this year they did something kind of similar, except it was a draw. And they essentially, so it's 15 groups of 3 for the group stage, and then there's 2 teams that have a bye round through the group stage, and those 2 teams are the winners of last year's MLS and Liga MX, which are Club America and Columbus Crew, aka our group last year. Yeah. As we were just saying. So they split these, and the Leagues Cup announcement lists them as tiers. They basically seeded everyone 1 through 45. And teams 1 through 15 are the, you know, pot A, and then 16 through 30 are pot B, and then tier 3, which is everyone 31 through 45, is pot C. And then every group gets a draw from each pot, basically. So we were 5th overall. Oh, and the way they decided these locations, it's kind of interesting. They made a giant table based off of points in your respective league last year, which I don't think is really, 1-to-1 if you think about it in terms of like Liga MX's table versus the MLS table. But Club America was the number one team in both leagues because they had 74 points. So they're, whatever, but they get a bye. CF Monterrey was number 2. They're technically seeded 1 because they had 73 points. And then Cincinnati scored 69 points. Nice. They're number 3 or number 2, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Did you hear? Speaking of that, conditioning people to things. So, Pavlov was able to cue their dogs to salivate whenever he rang the bell.
Familiar.
Did you hear how many tries it took him?
I think I know what the number is because of the number I just said, but please tell me.
It was 69 tries.
Nice. So anyway, we ended up 5th in the table, this combined table. So we were in pot A. And then we got a draw. And we were drawn with FC Dallas and FC Juarez, which I think is a fairly favorable group, except for the fact that every time we play FC Dallas, some weird ass shit happens. So it would be really nice if we could have a normal fucking game against Dallas for once. That's one of my goals for this year.
The other kicker is it sucks to keep getting draws against Western Conference teams when we're already seeing them multiple times here. Yeah. So, like, for example, Houston, we're going to see Houston 4 times this year minimum.
Right. I did the math, and we could potentially play Houston if the playoff format is the same, up to 8 times if we catch them in Open Cup and we catch them in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, so like, it technically take that up another notch to 9 because if for some reason in Leagues Cup we face them in knockout, we could face them up to 9 times this year.
They were also in Pot A, but they haven't done the bracket. Like, they haven't shown how the different like groups will go. We are technically in Group West 3, whereas Houston is in Group West 8. So I would imagine that we're on the same side of the bracket, but if that matches up, we should pair up, I guess, with West 6, which would be Seattle, Minnesota, and Club Necaxa. So probably Seattle or Minnesota. I guess it depends on how it goes. But
I just want to point out that it kind of, you just said Coxa, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's a very unusual word, and it's probably... Yeah, it doesn't matter. What was the other thing about this? Oh, and the top teams from Liga MX are actually like, they get to be considered hubs. And I don't have it pulled up exactly how it works, but I think it's Club America, CF Monterrey, Chivas, and maybe Tigres. So basically the 4 teams you would expect it to be. And they don't have to travel as much, basically. They have, quote unquote home field advantage in an MLS city, but they don't have to fly out as much because they will be the home team for so long, X amount of games, and it'll be at wherever their hub location is. I think,
and it's the off season for them, so
right. Well, and it'll probably, this whole Leagues Cup, and I think this is a great segue into the next point. But a large part of why this tournament sells for Liga MX is the fact that they want to get their product in front of American fans of Liga MX. And so those 4 teams are probably going to have a hub that is in a city that has an NFL team, which means that they can sell out a giant stadium because they want to get the product in front of as many people as possible, and they want to sell as many tickets as possible and make as much money as possible. And American fans of MLS have a bit of an issue with that because the league just tried to escape the U.S. Open Cup and tried not to play in it. And as things stand right now, MLS will be playing their first teams in the U.S. Open Cup because USSF, the U.S. Soccer Federation, basically said, tough titties, you're playing in it. So too bad.
No titties are bad titties, though. So let's clarify.
Let's clarify that. Yes. Very important. mention.
Go ahead and jot that down.
Yeah, so go ahead and jot that down. I love that scene. And It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Um, but so because of this, combination of the fact that they feel that it's a money grab by the leagues, and because MLS tried to get out of playing the US Open Cup, that there is talk of a potential boycott of the Leagues Cup, both with, attending in person and watching on Apple Plus. And I was curious what your thought was on this. So I'm trying to set you up there.
Yeah, you set me up for failure, which is fine, because I fail at most things in life.
I'm trying to set you up to hit a home run. What are you talking about? This is like a hanging curve.
Ding Dong Johnson. Here we go. Is that not what you call home runs? My bad.
No, I was just thinking of that kid in the Little League World Series where he was like, my name is Jeff or whatever it was, and I hit dingers. Please continue. Sorry.
So for this Ding Dong Johnson, I'm going to knock out of here. Here's the thing. There's going to be a lot of fans that are going to be pissy about it and whatever, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, the matches that are not going to sell and that people are going to be like, oh, we're not going, whatever, it's going to be these early group stage matches. The moment you hit this knockout stage of this tournament, they're going to sell out every single game. People are going to be watching. They're going to be fixed because they want their team to qualify for the Champions Cup.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. And not just that, but once you actually get into, and depending on what group you're drawn into, maybe sooner, once you start playing these top teams, I mean, like when we played against, Club America, it's obvious, right? You want to see how you perform against the top teams in our area, right? I mean, those are the top teams, and those are viewed as the top teams. And so people want to see how that goes. I don't think the boycott's real, and I think people will still go to the games or watch them.
Right. I do think that the boycott is real, and I don't think it has very much teeth in it right now because MLS has to play in US Open Cup. I do think, and especially for St. Louis City fans, I mean, our supporter groups were the first and came out the strongest saying that they will not be doing anything in Leagues Cup if MLS does not play in the US Open Cup. And that's where I stand. So long as we are participating in the Open Cup, I am all for Leagues Cup. And I will gladly boycott the Leagues Cup to make this point about the Open Cup, because I believe it is so vitally important to the soccer ecosystem in the US and to our city, which has a strong history there. But
I agree.
On the other side, that complaint that this is a money grab by the league, so fucking what? That's the point. We talk all the time that this league has no money and that they're like, we need to spend more money to buy better players to make it more interesting to recruit more fans. This is a way we make more money. And not only that, this tournament was really exciting last year, even outside of the fact that Messi came in and, dominated, right? Like a lot of the games were a lot of fun last year. I want that. I want fun games. I want international games, and I want this team in this league to make money, to make a better product. And this is one of the best ways they've come up with to do it. So I'm all for it.
I agree. I will also, like you said, if for some reason the Open Cup becomes an issue, I will boycott the Leagues Cup. I'm right there with you on that. But yeah, I also want to point out during that whole rant, you spared no expense at showing us that you have a sleeping child somewhere above you and that you wanted to get loud with your point, but then very quickly was like a whisper yell into the microphone. And I just want to make sure all of our listeners caught that.
How I leaned in and spoke louder. Yeah. It's actually not
except for that was actually louder than anything before. It was you were like, that's the flipping point, instead of being like, that's the flipping point, and getting into it.
Flipping, is that the word I said? I don't think I used that word.
You did not use flipping. I believe you said a word that could also be the same word for fornication.
Oh, yes. That sounds a little bit more like the language I would use. It's actually not the sleeping child. It is because she wakes up when she wakes up and she sleeps through everything else. Um, she really sleeps through a lot. It's actually the very pregnant wife who has not been sleeping well due to extreme pregnancy that I am a little bit more concerned about waking up right now. My daughter wakes up. That's just, well, too bad. You need to go back to bed. It's late. But my wife wakes up. I probably get in trouble. So, and I like doing this, so I don't want to get in trouble for doing it.
That's what she
But
said.
yeah, oh man, see, another hand curveball. I just set you up for that home run. You're welcome,
Yeah.
Mr. Ding Dong
Ding
Johnson.
Dong Johnson.
You know, I was originally going to name this episode Party Foul, and now I'm going to change it to Ding Dong Johnson. So, congratulations.
Hey, let me see your Ding Dong Johnson. Wait. I meant the highlight videos of your baseball games growing up. Sorry.
I didn't hit a lot of homers. Here's why my baseball career ended. It turns out that my vision got bad enough early enough that I didn't really develop hand-eye coordination for a long time.
Oh,
And
you developed
I
it?
struck out a little bit. But I struck out a lot. And turns out that I was not going to make the majors. So
Yeah, so I was just fast. The year they said, "Hey, if they drop the third strike, you can run to first," was the year that I talked to my uncle. Shout out to Uncle Sean, and he was like, "Oh yeah, if you have two strikes and it's in the dirt, you're pretty fast like I was. Just swing and start running."
right, yeah, there you go. Swing and start running. Absolutely. I
It's
was
technically
okay
a
in the field,
strikeout,
but
I was safe a lot.
right. I was pretty decent in the field, but if you can't hit, you can't play at a certain level.
Couple other exciting city things that
Yeah.
came out. So the City 2
Yeah.
roster was announced, and I hope to go more in depth next week when we focus more on City. So that's exciting to see the City 2 was
I'll
announced.
add it for you.
For those of you who did not make it to City 2 games last year and are looking to make it to City 2 games, they announced it's still $13 per ticket for games,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also offering season tickets to City 2. It's
Yeah. And they did that last year
$120
too, but yeah.
$120 per person. Or if you're a family of four, it's $400 for the season.
Right. I believe it's actually 125, but you know, $5 doesn't matter. $400 for a family of four is a really good deal. Like to get in the stadium, and I know that not all the restaurants are going to be there, and I know it's not going to be the first team guys.
They actually did announce that they actually have additional food vendors that are jumping in to be able to make it a better event so that families can come and get food and actually enjoy the things. They're really trying to put an emphasis on building this up, which I thought was exciting news.
And the one that I think their announcement specifically mentioned is Wally's, which is, you know, like a convenience store, but has a location in the stadium, is going to be open.
A convenience store.
It's basically Wally's, a Walmart in there. That's why they call it Wally's. It's from Walmart.
No, Wally's is a road trip pit stop location.
Is it a location you would stop out of convenience?
I would stop out of it convenience.
Which would make it a convenient store.
It'd make it a convenience stop of sorts.
So
I'm not going to let you have this.
Wally's.
When you hear convenience store, tell me what you think. You think of a 7-Eleven, right?
No, I think of a Wally's.
No. Are you telling me that Wally's and QT are the same thing?
Honestly, if I were to draw two comparisons, locally, QT would be the closest thing. Although, if you've ever stopped at a Buc-ee's, that's probably the best comparison.
Buc-ee's is the better comparison. Yeah. Here's or a Love's Truck Stop is another good comparison. Has a little bit of everything. But honestly, you want.
Fortunately, I didn't get any of the Love's Truck Stop money.
Yeah, you're not that Love's. But here's the thing. Think about QT. QT's, man, their food. And anybody who just goes in and grabs their food that's like sitting there ready to go is doing it wrong. I'm going to give a quick pro tip to those of you that are out there. Download the QT app, order in the app, and go in and get your fresh food that was just made for you and go and enjoy it. Go get their breakfast grilled cheese and customize it. Oh, put some sausage, and that is
Their
the
burritos are
breakfast
really
of
good
champions.
too. Their burritos
Breakfast
are
grilled
really good.
cheese.
Breakfast burritos.
I have
Yeah.
not had a breakfast grilled cheese in a
Oh,
while.
you're missing
Stupid
out.
trying to lose. Well, I'm trying to lose weight, and it's just killing me right now.
Give yourself a cheat day. You've earned it.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow.
You're Tyler Edwards, and you stand by QT breakfast.
I am Tyler Edwards, and I believe that all QTs are sacred.
That's right. But anyway, Wally's is a convenient stop inside the stadium that you should go to because the food will be good, and it'll be quick. Not only that, but did you see the supporters camp thing that they're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're going to basically like set up a little supporters section for the kids to come and beat on the drums and like, you know, pretend like they're in the supporters section, but without it being like as wild as the senior team games are, which I think is brilliant. You know, they're definitely gearing City 2 to be the family friendly option and a chance to, you know, from a cynical business type perspective, you know, it's hook them while they're young so that they're fans for life. But I'm not complaining because it's all really smart and looks like a blast, and I can't wait to go. And it's
cost effective.
And it's cost effective, right? Exactly, that's part of it. Yeah, and it's cost effective. So, like, I want to go. And the other thing about the roster that I think is important to mention, and I think it's kind of related to the family part of it and kids that are interested in soccer, is that, you know, this roster I think has 6 or 7 guys being promoted from the academy onto the City 2 team. Like that's important. And one of the things that you and I have talked a little bit about is that a lot of MLS teams, like there's only a few of them that really have good academies. Most of them really do not, and they don't really use City 2 as a vehicle to develop their players. And they certainly don't use USL to develop their players like we have with Miggy. And I think that's an important call out, that we have said from the beginning that we're going to be a development club and we're going to give these opportunities to young players, and we're seeing it happen in real time as these opportunities become available. So I just wanted to say that. And now I'm done.
I appreciate
I'm tired.
that.
I've said all my thoughts.
Do you know who, and speaking of, you know, trying to develop, do the right things, a team that has really struggled with that, the LA Rams, who went as far as to say, fuck them picks. And when they traded away all of their draft picks to win the Super Bowl. And again, that's fine, and that is what it is. But, you know, I don't believe in that strategy. I think you need to always be building for your future. And more importantly, the LA Rams are owned by the one and only Stan Kroenke, who I absolutely despise. And so with that being said, and for all of those listeners out there, Stan Kroenke, we hate you, and good night.